Hello, hello. How audible am I right now compared to the music? I can adjust that. Let me. How is this? Like coming in clear? Hello, hello. There we go. Can you hear me? All right, cool. Welcome to the stream. Hello, my name is Gabby Colley. Uh, some of you might know me as Gabby. We're going to be doing a special presentation on the basics of anarchism. Some of you may know this is a political ideology based around the deconstruction of hierarchy and for a more egalitarian society. Um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I might be a little nervous or hard with words. It's my first time doing like a presentation like this in a long time. Excuse me. For those of you who don't know anything about anarchism, this will be a really good presentation for you guys. Contrary to popular belief, anarchy is not, the concept of anarchy is not based around setting fire to trash cans and wrecking havoc. It is about building. Yo, hey Lily, welcome to the stream. Welcome back. Good to see you. Thank you for showing up. I was just explaining what the presentation is. We're going to be talking about the basics of anarchism and talking about how, what it is, why it is, why anarchism specifically compared to other leftist thought, like Marxist-Leninism, most specifically is like what we're going to really draw comparisons to, and what you guys can do to practice anarchism and help get organized in your areas, right? We can look at any given state, city, and see how you can get involved with organizations in your area. So yeah, I think we're gonna wait just a little bit longer just to make sure people can get in here. I am waiting for one of my mods to hop in, just to make sure that we're gonna be all good. Because sometimes, sometimes people will be like, "Oh, there's a a queer person talking about politics. Time to dive in and give my unnecessary opinion." While we're waiting, does anybody have any like preliminary questions or anything that they would like to talk about or share with their political experience or anything? Would love to discuss. Thoughts on liberals. So, liberals are probably the best described as a half measure to anything. They are big into maintaining the status quo. That is being capitalism, most importantly to them. And when they aren't interested in maintaining the status quo, they are actively causing harm by not directly opposing fascists like the Republican Party and the alt-right in general. Great examples being Mary Pelosi as Speaker of the House, making a performance of tearing up a proposed anti-gay bill, and then still passing that same bill like a month later. So Not too fond of liberals, I'd say, in my very bad fake British accent. I would say a lot of the times, people getting into leftism probably start with being a liberal, and then realize, instead of the podcast I listen to, I'm gonna be here. Oh, thanks, Mosby. Good to have you, bud. Mosby, matter of fact, Mosby, since I know you, you're gonna be running mod support today. So while I wait for my actual mod. Oh, you're already modded, so cool, perfect. You're cool. So if anybody starts acting up, then it's gonna be on you, bud. Cool. So, I'm at work, Gabby. Ah, that's too bad, bro. That's too bad, dog. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the music for a little bit because I don't need ads playing in my head. So yeah, so I think we've got enough people, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So hi, my name's Gabby Colley. Ooh, welcome to the collaborative presentation by me on the basics of anarchism. So starting off, what we're going to, let's like quickly highlight what are we going to be talking about today. This is a relatively short presentation, all in all. We're going to be talking about anarchism, what is hierarchy, why are we practicing anarchism specifically as opposed to other leftist ideologies. We're going to be talking about the methods of anarchism through methods being of like how do we build networks, how do we build community, and that's mainly through mutual aid and community defense. And then we're going to also talk about like what people here today can do to help fight fascism. Biggest thing, Google Oxford Dictionary defines anarchism as a political theory advocating the abolition of hierarchical government and the organization of society on a voluntary cooperative basis without recourse to force or compulsion. That's a lot of big words, so I thought I would try to like break that down easily for people. I don't know about you guys, but to be honest, big words scare me a little bit. So like it's hard for me to read like classic quote unquote literature and like old time theory. I much prefer like modern theory, if only one because it can be better, it can be phrased better, and two because you get to have like a broader spectrum of like voices that you're hearing. Like, you're not going to be hearing a lot of like well-published, well-documented like black anarchism, like black anarchists from like the 1800s, right? You'll hear a lot about it from like 1990s because of the rise of the Black Panther Party and stuff, although they were Maoist specifically, but that's a whole other subject. So in short, the simplest definition of anarchism I could describe was we were dismantling bosses and building community. And we'll go ahead and define what hierarchy is so that we can kind of elaborate on what I mean by bosses. So a hierarchy is any social structure where people have power over others, typically by coercion. Coercion was another one of those words used in that Oxford definition. Basically, coercion is suggestion, whether or through either like explicit threat or implied threat of violence or harm to the other person. So that's saying like, hey guys, I heard if we work extra super duper hard today, that we're totally gonna get we're totally gonna get a raise. We're totally gonna get that raise, guys. We're totally getting it. For some reason, oh geez, this text in the top right was cut off. I apologize. Other common hierarchies that you can think of would be like teachers above students. So has anybody here ever been in an argument with a teacher that you were confident didn't know what they were talking about, or were mistaken about something, but because they're your teacher, they are going to punish you because they're the teacher, they're going to demand your respect because you're just the student. Has anybody had that kind of experience? Good beat. Okay, nobody's responded, which is fine. Hold on, I actually am just gonna turn the music up. Sorry. It's fine if if you don't want to, if nobody wants to type up, it's fine. Another great example being parents over above their children. You know, like, oh, I'm the parent, I'm right, you're wrong, small child, doesn't matter. Police officers, another great example of hierarchy. They are able to apply pressure to you a lot through coercion, just through the simple presence of being the police officer. There is that kind of implied threat of force if you do not align with whatever they need you to. Police officers are basically just a local standing, like a standing army for any given city or state. And then, you know, another great example of hierarchy is just the corporate ladder in general. You're an employee, you have a boss, your boss has a boss, your boss has a boss has a boss. And that goes on, you know, that just goes on, right? So in short, if someone is telling you what to do or demands you to respect them because of quote unquote authority that they have over you, you live inside of a hierarchy, right? And hierarchies don't necessarily have to be purely legal power. A lot of it is social. You'll get like quote unquote shadow hierarchies, which are basically like implied hierarchies that happen through social interaction. So, you know, the idea of like, oh, respect your elders, that's a hierarchy. You know, let's see. It's another one. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm blanking a little bit on that real quick. I'm sorry. But sorry, I'm typing something to a friend. Sorry, I'm very sorry about that. So, ageism is a really great example of just like, you're younger than me, therefore you should respect me. So moving on. You know, why do we practice anarchism specifically? If you ever get into organizing to any degree, whether that's going out to protest, doing food distributions, clothes distributions, anything like that, anything when you're working within a group of people that isn't just like explicitly you and your friends, you're gonna run across anarchists, communists, like a lot of specific anarchists. Communists you'll find are like Marxists, Marxist-Leninists, Stalinists, or tankies as we call them, Maoists. You'll find these within the IWW, the PSL. The IWW is the International Industrial Workers of the World. It's a global union. Then you have the people for socialist liberty or socialist liberation, or PSL. You also have the DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists of America, and the SRA, which is the Socialist Rifle Association. All of those will have like a big jumble of, you know, Marxist-Leninists and anarchists and other forms of, and other communists like within them, right? A big way that leftism differs from conservatism and fascism is that there's a lot less like clear unity between leftist organizations, and that's mostly that they're anti-fascist, but they have different ways of how they would want to organize things. And anarchists and Marxist-Leninists in particular, Marxist-Leninists being communists that strictly follow the theories of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, are directly opposed. And historically so, anarchists were killed by Lenin after he had seized power of Soviet Russia, because despite the fact that anarchists did a lot of the work of establishing the revolution, they are directly opposed to Lenin keeping the power that he had of Soviet Russia. So they were considered counter-revolutionary and murdered. We'll get into more of that in a little bit, but to break down quickly, not quickly, but simply, anarchism is an egalitarian society with fluid leadership and is inherently cooperative, whereas most communist sects are authoritarian in that they have authority figures in a hierarchy. They have a static leadership, meaning people will remain in power for as long as they wish to remain in power. And that hierarchical nature means that the masses, the group as a whole, does not have a say in how things are established or in the way things are operated. So we'll kind of, I used for this discussion a gardening project as an analogy. So let's say we live in a purely leftist society, right? The revolution has come, and we're here, right? So you have the population, and then within the population of people, there are multiple projects, and there are multiple groups of people, and then within those groups of people are multiple projects, right? And we're going to be talking about the gardening project. So the gardening project in an anarchist society is egalitarian. That means there's no boss in any given community. The participation in projects, in aid, and any other efforts that the community wishes to do is voluntary, meaning you don't have to do it. You know, you're not being threatened to do it. You don't have to do it. And you're always working in tandem with other people. So if you're working in the garden, you and the rest of the gardeners have equal say on where to plant rose bushes, right? We'll go with rose bushes. However, if you live with the Marxist-Leninist society, you're going to have a boss. You're going to have, maybe the leader of the committee that is running the project and determining where everything goes. And then above them is going to be like maybe the community leader that's going to be determining like what projects get funding, etc. And then above them, you get some sort of fucking leader of the state, right? That's the other big thing between anarchists and communists, is that anarchists want to live in a stateless society, meaning there is no one government. It is a network of intermingling broader communities working in tandem with each other for aid. So in the authoritarian society, you don't necessarily get to have rose bushes. Instead, they've decided that they want to have tulips, right? In the anarchist society, things are very fluid, including leadership. So there's not directly going to be like a quote unquote leader of the organization per se, or the project at hand. But if some people have more experience with gardening, you're probably going to talk to them for advice, right? You're probably going to be like, oh, hey, what do you think would be a good idea here? And you may or may not follow that person's advice. The important part is that it's voluntary, and it's up to the group as a whole to decide whether or not they want to follow through with all of that, right? And, if you decide that, like, hey, you know what? The guy that wants us to plant tulips is kind of being a bit of a dickbag, you can just kick him out of the group, and that's it. Like, just take care of it, right? You don't necessarily have to, like, work with, like, if the group of people decides, like, oh, hey, this person isn't really a great fit for the project, we're going to vote for you to no longer be a part of the project, right? Whereas, if you go to the Marxist-Leninist society, or the Communist society in general, it's going to be like, hey, we got gardening commander Sergeant Baxter, and he's going to be the master of the rose bushes, and him and his committee have decided that, he's going to be in office for 9 years. He's going to be fucking planting the bushes for 9 fucking years. He knows exactly what the tulips need. And when he's done after 9 years, his twin brother's going to take over, and it's just going to be a guy with a funny mustache, but it's going to be the exact same dude. Because when you have hierarchy and people get put in power, that promotes the idea for that person in power to retain that power for as long as possible, right? Especially when we're talking about societies like the capitalist society that we live in, that is run on financial gain, right? Like, so the more money that you have, the more power that you have. So obviously, if you have any semblance of power, you want to retain that as much as possible. And unfortunately, a lot of communists really want to, like, they talk about, like, oh, like, we're going to be in a transitionary state. So we're going to temporarily have power, but it'll eventually wither away when the country is ready for us to no longer be in power, right? So we'll just only temporarily guide society. But I mean, historically speaking, Vladimir Lenin and his murder of counter-revolutionaries, you know, like it was never good enough, right? People were never quite ready for him to leave office, which was like most of the fucking problems with his rule over Soviet Russia, or the Soviet Union in general, right? And that leads back to what I was talking about with anarchism, was that the society as a whole and the project is wholly cooperative, right? So you and your friends are designing the garden together, and you all want it to be in this public park, this public space where people can stop by, smell the roses, chat, do whatever, right? Like, you're doing this project not because it serves some like other purpose, or because it's like, oh well, we want to, we want to like do something with it. Like, it doesn't necessarily serve a like productive purpose. It is purely for the sake of like, we want this to happen, right? Whereas in the communist society, the hierarchical society, the garden committee was commissioned by the state to make a garden for their dinner parties. Like, they're going to tell you to make the garden, not because you want to, but because they need you to. They need your labor to do so. Unfortunately, what a lot of the problems with communism as it's been practiced historically is that the people that become powerful from communist revolutions don't want to give that power away. They want that power for themselves. It turns into a very much a fuck you, I got mine mentality. I made this little meme here. I don't know how well you guys can see it. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of zoom this in a little bit for you. This is a funny little meme that I made. Like, people suffering under the oppressive nature of capitalism. Oh, thank God you freed us. And then you have Jonah Hill as the Marxist-Leninists, the Maoists, and Stalin is saying, oh, I wouldn't say freed, more like under new management. Memes are always great when you explain them, but I assume there's probably at least one or two people that are not like visual, like watching the stream. They're listening to it, so I want to at least explain that for them, or for any people that might be visually impaired listening to the stream, because who knows? I don't know. And the next thing we're going to talk about is methods of anarchism. So mutual aid essentially just means, excuse me, my back. Mutual aid just means any efforts you make within your community to help other people, right? Because the understanding is that if you help these people, it makes the community as a whole better, which means things will be better for you inherently as a member of that community. But it also serves other purposes. So it helps you build connections between people. So a great example is I work with my friends to do houseless distributions. We pass out food, batteries, baby wipes, whatever resources these houseless people in the area need. If we can gather them, we gather them and we give them away, so that these people don't have to rely on private companies or the state when I say state, that means the government, the country, the state that you live in, or what have you, whatever's relevant to the conversation. You know, so 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 it's important to help build this independence from the government the government that we live under, because the government that we live under is not interested in helping the poor people. It's not. Like, homelessness would not be a problem in our society if the government was interested in helping homeless people. We have an excess of homes that these people could be living in. We have great examples in other countries of like clean needle programs to help people, wane off drugs, or at least prevent them from having to share needles and get like bad infections and diseases. We see so many veterans coming from these foreign wars and then being stuck, not being able to take care of themselves because they aren't getting the support from the one place that they thought they could get it from. Right. So by by doing all this mutual aid for people, it helps guide them towards resources that are reliable. Right. And when you work together, you could build these networks of aid. So where, oh, hey, you're here at the food distribution and you need batteries. Well, thankfully, we have another group over in this part of town that'll help you get electronics, get you a tent, warming, something to keep warm, clothes, housing, clean needles, etc., etc. By creating this network of aid, you are making the community as a whole stronger, not just houseless people or people that you help, but just the average person is going to be living in a better community simply by the fact that they'll have access to more resources, right? And another big aspect of building community is community defense. And this can be anything from teaching self-defense classes, teaching firearms training, to as we'll be talking later on, as you can tell from these pictures, community, civilian defense forces, being that, like, we are members of the community, we are trained in defense of our community, and we do not need police officers to come into the community. We are like making a community able to be independent from the government or the state, is what we would call building dual power, right? That's DUALPOWER. I'll write this down. Dual, like an Among Us, dual power, right? Because the power is coming from the community being able to defend itself, right? Rather than the singular power of the government, you have the secondary power of the communities themselves being able to take care of themselves, right? There are a lot of different theories on how to establish dual power. There are a lot of theories of how to establish a justice system within within communities. You have stuff like, currently what you have is like punitive justice in broader society, which is basically like you did a crime, you are going to be punished, and like you strictly, right, are going to be punished for the crime and spend time in prison. There's also transformative justice, which is a theory. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's essentially establishing, like, okay, you've committed a crime for a reason. What is that reason? Is it based off of a greater societal issue that we need to work towards changing, et cetera, et cetera? It's a little bit more complicated than that, and it's not so. There are some criticisms to be had of it, mostly in the nature of how it's organized and then how that justice is doled out, with whether it's being like, if it's kind of inherently hierarchical, to have like some sort of group of people that are able to decide on the fate of another person, or not fate. That's a little, I think that's a little dramatic, but the result of a person's mistake, I guess, for the lack of a better word. But back to the community defense and what that means. So community defense, being able to have people to protect their community, means that less police have to get involved, which means less like police brutality incidences, less murder, less false arrests, because police no longer have to be patrolling the area and whatnot. And a protected community means that fascists stay out, right? If fascists know, like, if you go to this fucking street, you're not welcome, right? That is all the better for the community, because that means that people can walk safely, right? You know, people can walk around and trust in their fellow person and not have to fucking be scared that, like, oh, I'm wearing my fucking trans pride flag, I might get fucking the shit beaten out of me, right? And talking more like globally, community defense groups already exists in different capacities. The examples we're going to be talking about are not themselves based within anarchist forces. However, I do think they do have really interesting things to learn from. So community defense groups have been a great way for women across the globe to have agency within their own communities and overcome the oppression of society as a whole. We're going to be talking about the HPC Jin of Rojava. So if you're not familiar with, Rojava is a region between North and East Syria. It is an autonomous zone there. I think it's literally called the Autonomous Zone of North and East Syria, and then the region itself by locals is called Rojava. Within that autonomous zone, it's autonomous because they don't require like a standing military. They don't require serious standing military or anything like that. They grow their own food, et cetera, et cetera. They defend themselves against ISIS forces, which is really fucking cool. So the Civilian Defense Forces, or HPC, serve as a local level security along with other regional forces. And then there is an all women's section of that force called the HPC Jin, where that's a photo of some of these women in the force. It's, as you can see, some of them are like quite old, like quite older. You know, it's not just for young women. Older women have learned like arms training to protect their communities, because that is the nature of the world that they live in. It's like, okay, well, like, we want to live autonomously. We don't want to have to rely on a government to protect us from these people that are at our doorstep. I would greatly recommend people look into learning about the Kurds in Syria, the Kurdish people in Syria, about Turkey, and about Russia's invasive forces into Syria. As early as, I want to say, 2011, and I want to say there was a massacre in 2015. I think that going into it is a little beyond the scope of this presentation right now, but that can definitely be something that we talk about later at a later presentation, because I do plan on doing these every Thursday. I want this to be a dedicated time and space to have these discussions. So like I said, the HPC Jin are not anarchists. And, you know, if we're being quite honest, Syria has a bit of a homophobia problem. But their practice of arming civilians to defend the community has drawn attention to the area in general. And I think it's a great way of showing that this is possible. It is entirely possible to have an autonomous force outside of your government, whether that's local or state or, you know, federal, and protect your community and keep out fucking fascists and fucking awful people, right? So we can also want to just talk about, like, what can you do today, right? What can you do today to help learn about anarchism and just get involved with your community, right? So biggest thing, number one thing is just learn, read, write, talk to people, come to these presentations if you're so inclined. No one is expecting you to know everything, but it is important that you take the time to learn some things, right? Like I'm still learning about anarchism in a broader scope. You know, I have a lot of friends, thankfully, that are very well informed and can point me towards things. A great resource for you guys, because there are a lot of free resources to read up on this stuff. If you don't want to just read about history, if you don't and you don't want to necessarily read about current events, you know, there's the Anarchist Library. You can literally just go on google.com and search anarchist library, and it's article after article after article after article that you can read, print out. And I say article, these aren't necessarily like super long documents. Some of them are quite lengthy, but some of them are just zines that have been collected and printed and scanned and printed and uploaded, right? And I would love to take some time later today after this presentation is done to kind of go do some reading, right? I'll read aloud and y'all can listen and we can take questions. And then, you know, I think another big thing is like when you're learning, and if you really are vibing with anarchism, right, is like talk to people about it, bring it up, like, oh, hey, you know, you ever think about how kind of like fucked up the world is? And then just talk to your friends about anarchism, right? Talk to them about like, hey, why don't we get involved with an org and like help make our community better, make it safer. Learn how to defend yourself against fascists. Learn the call sign, not the call signs, the telling signs of a fascist. Learn how they like to hide themselves inside fandoms and shit to make themselves seem totally just like one of the guys or whatever. Because that's what fascists like to do. They like to interlope into they like to enter fandoms and other shit and other people's interests and try and twist it to be about them and their thing, right? It happened with punks and skinheads. Skinheads apparently was not a Nazi thing at first. It just happened to turn into that because Nazis got into punk because they're stupid and they don't understand what punk's about. Then they became fucking skinheads, and then now the only thing people know about with skinheads is that they're Nazis, and apparently that's not true. You know, and when you feel like you've learned enough and you're ready to go out and actually do some like organizing work, you know, if you have the time and energy to spare, find an organization, right? You know, I was talking about the IWW and the SRA and the DSA, and those, you know, you're gonna unfortunately come across some Marxist-Leninists and tankies and shit, but you know, it's a good entry point at least. If you can keep a good head on your shoulders, and you know, you understand that not everybody's fucking perfect, you can work together with some people and do some good work, right? Like I would obviously prefer being in an anarchist organization, but you know, not everybody has an anarchist organization. But you know what? If you get some like-minded people together, you can make one. You can just make one. It's not that hard. Just keep with it, you know? And, you know, when you're doing that with your friends, like just help those in need. Do mutual aid. Pass out food. Canned food, clothes, batteries. I guarantee you any houseless person you cross around the street will definitely appreciate food, water, batteries, clothes, any other resources and stuff. You know, find the camp that they stay at. Talk to them. A lot of churches, honestly, have efforts. You could talk to them, communicate with them, build that network with the church and be like, okay, well, hey, a lot of churches will actually like help host these events. I would personally recommend, you know, eventually breaking away from the church to be able to do it on your own, but obviously that takes a lot of time. But there are definitely things to do in the world. Definitely there are things to do. And I genuinely encourage everybody to do their best to do good in the world and help their fellow person. Twitch is telling me that I have 59 seconds before an ad plays. I apologize for that. I would encourage everybody to mute the stream for once we hit the 30-second mark. But for now, anybody that's listening, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want like to share a story about like about their experiences with politics, or how they got into leftist thought, or if they learned anything today? I would love to hear what you guys learned. Or if you have any questions, like, please hit me up. Ad starts in 20 seconds. I unfortunately don't know how to turn them off. Ah. Okay, are we back? Everybody back yet? Oh, okay. crashing. I didn't realize. My bad. All right, looks like we're all back, which is good, and it's over for me. Over. Oh, good. Awesome. We're gonna go ahead and shift over to this screen, and we're gonna do eyeballing for real. I get you. we're gonna go ahead and do a reading of just some literature. We're not gonna. I have a couple tabs open. We won't do the whole thing, just because I know one, Mo is working, and then two, some of these are kind of long. I just wanted to do at least some things that I think we could relate to. I think we could all relate to on the phenomenon of bullshit jobs, a work rant, by David Graeber. So this was made, this is the Anarchist Library, by the way. This is the anarchistlibrary.org. It is a great resource for just about any text. You can even check out the popular ones, like what's over in the popular text. You've got Urfascism, and you know, this one's pretty long, I would say. Well, it's pretty long, but short instructional manifesto for relationship anarchy. This one's pretty short, right? We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at that one too. Yep, bullshit jobs is on here. Nice. You know, so great resources, like just being able to read some anarchist text, right? So, on the phenomenon of bullshit jobs, a work rant by David Graeber. In the year 1930, John Maynard Keynes predicted that by century's end, technology would have advanced sufficiently that countries like Great Britain or the United States would have achieved a 15-hour work week. There's every reason to believe he was right. In technological terms, we are quite capable of this, yet it didn't happen. Instead, technology has been marshaled, if anything, to figure out ways to make us all work more. In order to achieve this, jobs have had to be created that are effectively pointless. Huge swaths of people in Europe and North America in particular spend their entire working lives performing tasks they secretly believe do not really need to be performed. The moral and spiritual damage that comes from this situation is profound. It gives us a scar across our collective soul, yet virtually no one talks about it. Why did Keynes promise utopia, still being eagerly awaited in the 1960s, never materialize? The standard line today is that he didn't figure in the massive increase in consumerism. Given the choice between less hours and more toys and pleasures, we've collectively chosen the latter. This presents a nice morality tale, but even a moment's reflection shows it can't really be true. Yes, we have witnessed the creation of an endless variety of new jobs and industries since the 20s. Very few have anything to do with the production and distribution of sushi, iPhones, or fancy sneakers. So what are these new jobs precisely? A recent report comparing employment in the US between 1910 and 2000 gives us a clear picture. And I note, one pretty much exactly echoed in the UK. Over the course of the last century, the number of workers employed as domestic servants in industry and in the farm sector has collapsed dramatically. At the same time, quote, professional, managerial, clerical, sales, and service workers tripled, growing from 1/4 to 3/4 of total employment. In other words, productive jobs have, just as predicted, been largely automated away, even if you count industrial workers globally, including the toiling masses in India and China. Such workers are still not nearly so large a percentage of the world population as they used to be. But rather than allowing a massive reduction of working hours to free the world's population to pursue their own projects, pleasures, visions, and ideas, we have seen the ballooning of not even so much of the service sector as of the administrative sector. up to and including the creation of whole new industries like financial services or telemarketing, or the unprecedented expansion of sectors like corporate law, academic and health administration, human resources, and public relations. These numbers do not even reflect on all those people whose job is to provide administrative, technical, or security support for these industries, or for that matter, the whole host of ancillary industries, dog washers, all-night pizza delivery, that only exist because everyone else is spending so much of their time working in all the other ones. These are what I propose to call bullshit jobs. It's as if someone were out there making up pointless jobs just for the sake of keeping us all working. And here precisely lies the mystery. In capitalism, this is precisely what is not supposed to happen. Sure, in the old inefficient socialist states like the Soviet Union, where employment was considered both a right and a sacred duty, the system made up as many jobs as they had to. This is why in Soviet department stores it took 3 clerks to sell a piece of meat. But of course, this is the sort of very problem market competition is supposed to fix. According to economic theory, at least, the last thing a profit-seeking firm is going to do is shell out money to workers they don't really need to employ. Still, somehow, it happens. While corporations may engage in ruthless downsizing, the layoffs and speed-ups invariably fall in that class of people who are actually making, moving, fixing, and maintaining things. Through some strange alchemy no one can quite explain, the number of salaried paper pushers ultimately seems to expand, and more employees find themselves, not unlike Soviet workers actually, working 40 or even 50-hour weeks on paper, but effectively working 15 hours just as Keynes predicted, since the rest of their time is spent organizing or attending motivational seminars, updating their Facebook profiles, or downloading TV box sets. The answer clearly isn't economic, it's moral and political. The ruling class has figured out that a happy and productive population with free time on their hands is a mortal danger. Think of what started to happen when this even began to be approximated in the 60s. And on the other hand, the feeling of that work is a moral value in itself, and that anyone not willing to submit themselves to some kind of intense work discipline for most of their waking hours deserves nothing, is extraordinarily convenient for them. Once, when contemplating the apparently endless growth of administrative responsibilities in British academic departments, I came up with one possible vision of hell. Hell is a collection of individuals who are spending the bulk of their time working on a task they don't like and are not especially good at. Say they were hired because they were excellent cabinet makers, and then discovered they are expected to spend a great deal of their time frying fish. Neither does the task really need to be done, at least there's only a very limited number of fish that need to be fried. Yet somehow, they all become so obsessed with resentment at the thought that some of their coworkers might be spending more time making cabinets and not doing their fair share of the fish frying responsibility, that before long there's endless piles of useless, badly cooked fish piling up all over the workshop, and it's all that anyone really does. I think this is actually a pretty accurate description of the moral dynamics of our own economy. Now, I realize any such argument is going to run into immediate objections. Who are you to say what jobs are really, quote, necessary? What's necessary anyway? You're an anthropology professor. So, apparently David Graeber is an anthropology professor. What's the, quote, need for that? And indeed, a lot of tabloid readers would take the existence of my job as the very definition of wasteful social expenditure. And on one level, this is obviously true. There can be no objective measure of social value. I would not presume to tell someone who is convinced they are making a meaningful contribution to the world that, really, they're not. But what about these people who are themselves convinced their jobs are meaningless? Not long ago, I got back in touch with a school friend who I hadn't seen since I was 12. I was amazed to discover that in the interim, he had become first a poet, then the front man in an indie rock band. I'd heard some of his songs on the radio, having no idea the singer was someone I actually knew. He was obviously brilliant, innovative, and his work had unquestionably brightened and improved the lives of people all over the world. Yet, after a couple of unsuccessful albums, he'd lost his contract and, plagued with debts and a newborn daughter, ended up, as he put it, quote, taking the default choice of so many directionless folk, law school. Now he's a corporate lawyer working at a prominent New York firm. He was the first to admit that his job was utterly meaningless, contributed nothing to the world, and in his own estimation should not really exist. There's a lot of questions one could ask here, starting with what does it say about our society that it seems to generate an extremely limited demand for talented poet musicians, but an apparently infinite demand for specialists in corporate law? Answer: if 1% of the population controls most of the disposable wealth, what we call the market reflects what they think is useful and important, not anybody else. But even more, it shows that most people in these jobs are ultimately aware of it. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever met a corporate lawyer who didn't think their job was bullshit. The same goes for almost all the new industries outlined above. A whole class of salaried professionals that, should you meet them at parties and admit that you do something that might be considered interesting, an anthropologist, for example, will want to avoid even discussing their line of work entirely, one or the other. Give them a few drinks, and they will launch into tirades about how pointless and stupid it is. This is that dog in you barking for, yeah, that was my dog, Bubba. I think, oh, the pizza's arrived. There's pizza. Funny enough, we were talking about pizza delivery drivers only existing because everybody else is too busy working to make their own pizza, cook their own pizza, go out and get their own pizza picked up rather than delivered. Oh boy, how appropriate. Let's see, where did we leave off? This is a profound psychological this is a profound psychological violence here. How can one even begin to speak of dignity in labor when one secretly feels one's job should not exist? How can it not create a sense of deep rage and resentment? Yet it is the peculiar genius of our society that its rulers have figured out a way, as in the case of the fish fryers, to ensure that rage is directed precisely against those who actually do get to do meaningful work. For instance, in our society, there seems to be a general rule that the more obviously one's work benefits other people, the less one is likely to be paid for it. Again, an objective measure is hard to find, but one's easy way to get a sense is to ask, what would happen were this entire class of people to simply disappear? Say what you like about nurses, garbage collectors, or mechanics, it's obvious that they were to vanish, were they to vanish in a puff of smoke, the results would be immediate and catastrophic. A world without teachers or dock workers would soon be in trouble, and even one without science fiction writers or ska musicians would clearly be a lesser place. That's how I know that. I don't know if I should keep reading that. They said ska was good. That's crazy. No, see, because this would be like second wave ska, which is British. So, it's not entirely clear how humanity would suffer were all private equity CEOs, lobbyists, PR researchers, actuaries, telemarketers, bailiffs, or legal consultants to similarly vanish. Many suspect it markedly improved. Yet, apart from a handful of well-touted exceptions, doctors, the rule holds surprisingly well. Even more perverse, there seems to be a broad sense that this is the way things should be. This is one of the secret strengths of right-wing populism. You can see it when tabloids whip up resentment against tube workers for paralyzing London during contract. The very fact that tube workers can paralyze London shows that their work is actually necessary, but this seems to be precisely what annoys people. It's even clearer in the US, where Republicans have had remarkable success mobilizing resentment against school teachers or auto workers, and not significantly against the school administrators or auto industry managers who actually cause the problems, for their supposedly bloated wages and benefits. Hot pizza. It's as if they are being told, but you get to teach children or make cars. You get to have real jobs. And on top of that, you have the nerve to also expect middle-class pensions and healthcare? If someone had designed a work regime perfectly suited to maintaining the power of finance capital, it's hard to see how they could have done a better job. Real, productive workers are relentlessly squeezed and exploited. The remainder are divided between a terrorized stratum of the universally reviled, unemployed, and a larger stratum who are basically paid to do nothing in positions designed to make them identify with the perspectives and sensibilities of the ruling class. Parentheses, managers, administrators, etc. And particularly its financial avatars, but at the same time foster a simmering resentment against anyone whose work has clear and undeniable social value. Clearly, the system was never consciously designed. It emerged from almost a century of trial and error, but it is the only explanation for why, despite our technological capacities, we are not all working 3 to 4 hour days. Wow, that is a very interesting essay. I get where he's coming from. Take a bite of this food. Let me see who Dave Graeber is. American anthropologist. Okay. David Rolf Graeber. Sorry. God, I'm stupid. Drank bad. How do I drink bad? I'd say this is a pretty interesting perspective in that I think most of us would think that teachers, car repairmen, etc., all these jobs that are being mentioned that are like necessary for dock workers, that are necessary for society to function as is, are necessary but also underappreciated. But twisting that into being actually the fact that they are necessary is what makes them valued to the bullshit people. It's an interesting perspective to take. But I think overall when was this published? 2013. Okay. Read on from Strike Back. Oh, that website is down. I think it'd be more clear. I think it's more clear to understand that we, as a society, tend to not value intense labor jobs. We don't value the people that are picking the strawberries that we buy and eat from grocery store. We aren't valuing the person that's delivering our pizza, the person delivering food off of DoorDash and Uber that only gets $2.50 from the tip that you put in, that you can barely afford to put in because you're working 50-hour work weeks every week to put food on the fucking table. The way society has been built in order to perpetuate capital is a very lonely one. You work hard because society needs you to do so for it to function. You need to work hard as a teacher for little pay because you're gonna be like these kids that you are literally this kid's education, right? You're gonna be what helps them become a functioning adult in the future. And society or the government and capitalism have deemed you important for productivity, but not enough to actually give you a living wage, right? Not enough to allow you to actually like be comfortable in your life. And I mean, I think this is a really good essay. I really think this probably is something really good you could show somebody to talk about how undervalued um, jobs really are all the time. The way I see it personally, I wouldn't necessarily call a job bullshit unless it was like directly like hierarchical, right? Because like I and only because I am hesitant to like deny somebody the labor that they put into a job, right? Because there are people that are like working for a Xerox company, sitting in front of a computer 50 hours a week, right? They're the people that you have to talk to that are trying to sell you insurance, that are working off a commission, right? Like those people, those sales folk, they're still having to work. I've been in that office. I've been in that office being told like, hey, you're not pushing hard enough, you're not selling hard enough, you know. And that's, you know, those people worked really hard to get the license that they have to sell insurance. And all they have constantly is people in their ear telling them you're not doing good enough, blah blah blah, right? I think I don't want to deny those people the labor that they put in, the emotional labor that they put in, also when they have to be on the phone with a person. A lot of the times when you're in a phone call in a sales job, a person's going to tell you your life story, their life story, and it's going to be really fucking tragic a lot of the times. Talking about insurance specifically, insurance doesn't want you to teach people about how insurance works. I worked with a company called Allstate, a insurance company in America. I would very often have people that made bad decisions in regards to their insurance because they were not made aware by the company. There are insurance companies that will sell you a policy knowing full well it will fuck you up in the future, and if you got into an accident, that person would be fucked. And I had multiple times where, you know, I would be on the phone with a customer and explain to them like, hey, this is what happened, this is why. And I always have to frame it like, this is why I can't sell insurance to you, right? Not that like I have to phrase it that like the fact that it's a sales call, right? But it's just awful. But I'm being told, I was being told by my bosses like, hey, we need you to spend less time educating like the customers. Like if there can't be a customer, just move on. Literally just like, this person's already fucked over, don't worry about it, just move on. It's like, no, I want to take the time to explain how they got fucked over so that they don't have to deal with that later in life, right? I didn't work in insurance for very long, so you know, fuck. Okay, let's read this brief article, this brief zine from 2006. It's a manifesto for relationship anarchy. Love is abundant and every relationship is unique. Love and respect instead of entitlement. Find your core set of relationship values. Heterosexism is rampant and out there, but don't let fear lead you. Build for the lovely, unexpected. Fake it till you make it. Trust is better. Change through communication. Customize your commitment. This is a new translation adaptation to English of a relationship anarchy pamphlet by me, Andy Nordgren, published in Swedish as Relations Anarchy I 8 punkter by Interacting Arts in 2006. Okay, so it's going to break down these points. Love is abundant and every relationship is unique. Relationship anarchy questions the idea that love is a limited resource that can only be real if restricted to a couple. Okay, so this is going to talk about polyamory. You have the capacity to love more than one person in one relationship, and the love felt for that person does not diminish love felt for another. Don't rank and compare people in relationships. Cherish the individual and your connection to them. One person in your life does not need to be named primary for the relationship to be real. Each relationship is independent a relationship between autonomous individuals. Love and respect instead of entitlement. Deciding to not base a relationship on a foundation of entitlement is about respecting others' independence and self-determination. Your feelings for a person or your history together does not make you entitled to command and control a partner to comply with what is considered normal to do in a relationship. Explore how you can engage without stepping over boundaries and personal beliefs. Rather than looking for compromises in every situation, let loved ones choose paths that keep their integrity intact without letting this mean a crisis for the relationship. Staying away from entitlement and demands is the only way to be sure that you are in a relationship that is truly mutual. Love is not more, quote, real when people compromise for each other because it's part of what's expected. Find your core set of relationship values. How do you wish to be treated by others? What are your basic boundaries and expectations on all relationships? What kind of person would you like to spend your life with? How would you like your relationships to work? Find your core set of values and use it for all relationships. Don't make special rules and exceptions as a way to show people you love them for real. Heterosexism is rampant and out there, but don't let fear lead you. Excuse me. Remember that there is a very powerful normative system in play that dictates what real love is and how people should live. Many will question you in the validity of your relationships when you don't follow these. Work with the people you love to find escapes and tricks to counter the worst of the problematic norms. Find positive counterspells and don't let fear drive your relationship. Build for the lovely unexpected. Being free to express oneself without fear of punishments or a sense of burdened shoulds is what gives life to relationships based on relationship anarchy. Organized based on a wish to meet and explore each other, not on duties and demands and disappointment when they are not met. Fake it till you make it. Sometimes it can feel like you need to be some complete superhuman to handle all the norm breaking involved in choosing relationships that don't map to the norm. A great trick is the fake it till you make it strategy. When you're feeling strong and inspired, think about how you would like to see yourself to act. Transform that into some simple guidelines and stick to them when things are rough. Talk to and seek support from others who challenge norms, and never reproach yourself when the norm pressure gets you into behavior you didn't wish for. Trust is better. Choosing to assume that your partner does not wish you harm leads you down a much more positive path than a distrustful approach when you need to be constantly validated by the other person to trust that they are there with you in the relationship. Sometimes people have so much going on inside themselves that there's just no energy left to reach out and care for others. Create the kind of relationship where withdrawing is both supported and quickly forgiven. And give people lots of chances to talk, explain, see you, and be responsible in the relationship. Remember your core values and to take care of yourself, though. Change through communication. For most human activities, there is some form of norm in place for how it is supposed to work. If you want to deviate from this pattern, you need to communicate. Otherwise, things tend to end up just following the norm, as others behave according to it. Communication and joint actions for change is the only way to break away. Radical relationships must have conversation and communication at the heart, not as a state of emergency only brought out to solve problems. Communicate in a context of trust. We are so used to the people never really saying what they think and feel. We have to read between the lines and extrapolate to find what they really mean. But such interpretations can only build on previous experience, usually based on the norms you want to escape. Ask each other about stuff and be explicit. I'm sorry, I just saw one of my friends just made an account on Feet Finder. Good for them. Life would not have much structure or meaning without joining together with other people to achieve. Constructing a life together, raising children, owning a house, or growing together through thick and thin. Such endeavors usually need lots of trust and commitment between people to work. Relationship anarchy is not about never committing to anything. Signing your own commitments with the people around you and freeing them from norms dictating that certain types of commitments are a requirement for love to be real. That some commitments like raising children or moving in together have to be driven by certain kinds of feelings. Start from scratch and be explicit about what kind of commitments you want to make. I think that's really sweet. So me personally, I was raised monogamous, right? So I've mostly only practiced monogamous relationships. Right now the relationship I'm in is, I'd say, fairly potentially open. Right now we've kind of established that, like, hey, when we met, like, we were both having another person that we were interested in. So the relationship is open for that person in particular, if they so choose to participate in some degree. But if you want other people to participate, that's also fine. I just want to be able to, like, we just both want to be able to communicate that with the other person, right? And so far that's been really good. We haven't had anything come up. I in particular am not, like, actively looking for anything, right? But I want to make sure that the other person has the capability. Like, if I had the freedom to do so, I need the other person to be able to do so, right? Like, that's just fair for me personally. Even if they never choose to act on it, right? So I think this is pretty cool discussion. I mean, it's 2006, right? So that's like, you know, this is kind of like, this isn't really like out there for fucking 2023 values, right? Like, polyamory is getting pretty popular now. I know, like, multiple polyamorous people. But I think this is really cool. I think it's a pretty good document. I'm gonna go ahead and call it for here. I think this is really good talk. But I do want to open the floor for any questions, stories, feedback. How did you guys think I did on the presentation? Is there anything you would like to see the next week? Is there any specific topics you would like me to touch up on? Like, anything that you specifically want me to talk about next week? Go ahead and just type in chat. We've got a lot of time to burn before the next ad break, so no interruptions or nothing. Go ahead. My issue largely with anarchism is its heavy reliance on altruism to function. Well, thank you, Morty. I appreciate you. Hey, like, Andrew, I mean, we can talk about that. We can talk about altruism and stuff. I mean, me personally, I think that humans are a neutral like, not neutral, actually. We are social animals, right? And there is studies to suggest that selfish behavior was often, like, frowned upon in the early days of humanity and human existence, because it literally does nothing to, like, as a social animal that builds community naturally as a means of survival, it would do nothing for that community by being selfish. And I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a bad idea to work towards an altruistic future, right? Like, because the fact of the matter is, you could really say that about any ideology, right? Like, you can say, like, oh, well, capitalism relies on altruism in order to actually function properly, and it's not functioning properly. Therefore, whatever. Right? The important aspects of anarchism is working equally together to form a connected community, right? And fortunately, right now we exist in a society in which capital drives us to do things that we do. Um, capitalism can drive us to rob, to steal in order to survive. People that don't get that don't have a support network might end up committing violent crimes because they literally are not able to handle like shit, right? And that's not their fault, right? That is a failure of capitalist society by not supporting that person. Anarchism serves to support these people in need by providing them the resources within their community in order to help. I think this is more of a return to what life used to be like before capitalism, rather than some new me, personally. Is there any stories or anything or like experiences people want to share with their like any political experiences or anything anybody wants to talk about? I know it's kind of vague, but talk about how cops suck, or does anybody want to talk to me about like, oh hey, can we talk about this aspect of society next week, or can we talk about like ways anarchism wants to do so and so, like what are the strategies for this, what are the strategies for that? This is a this is a cooperative learning experience, right? So like I want to be able to be like, oh okay, this is what my community wants me to look at, let me look at that real quick and then grab that knowledge and then share that with you guys next week. I'm totally down for that. Sorry for any noise, I'm just also eating. Oh, no worries, Lycander. Do you want me to repeat what I said? I don't. I mean, when I didn't mean that in a rude way. I mean, like, do you want me to repeat myself? Because I can. Sure. Okay. So, I mean, I think, but rather, I know humans are social animals that thrive on community, right? I don't find anarchism as a like hopeful altruistic means of existence. That is literally just what we existed in prior to the conception of capitalism. People had equal roles and equal say in what we did, and that reflects in religious teachings too. Like Jesus was kind of essentially like an anarcho-communist in a lot of ways, teaching about, you know, both anarchy and communism. Like, you know, fucking what's the quote from the Bible? Easier for a man to fit a camel through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to make it to heaven. Then there's the whole throwing the merchants out of the temple because they were using it as a marketplace. Right? Those are all anti-capitalist statements, right? Like that's explicitly against the concepts of greed and stuff, which is what capitalism is built on inherently on, right? I think that capitalism's utter failure to provide for the people that exist in it and allow it to continue and be perpetuated is evidence enough that it is not the natural way, quote unquote, for humans to exist in. Therefore, we need to take the time to establish a new way of would anybody like me to look up leftist organizations in their area to see how they can get started? Quick Google searches or something. Anybody want to give me a, it doesn't even have to be your area, frankly. We can just look up random shit. In small communities, cooperation is essential, but on a large scale, you would find conflict for resources. Capitalism takes us to the other end and puts us all at odds with each other. I feel there's a balance somewhere. Well, the thing, Lycander, is that what the great thing about anarchism and living in a modern society is that we wouldn't really be in conflict for resources because we know how to grow these resources and we have the tools to manufacture these resources, right? And furthermore, the point of establishing an anarchist society is that we're all building networks of communities together and therefore not actually in conflict with one another because we're relying on one another to exist properly, right? That's the balance in between that you're talking about. Well, yeah, you know what? Let's see. Hold on. Philadelphia leftists, socialists, progressive organizations. Let's see. State nurses, Pennsylvania Together, Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. Good. Socialist PSA. Ooh. South Asian Collective. Fighting for a union. Right populism's big lie. Good for them. Let's see. Publications called What We Stand For. Let's see what they stand for. Socialist Alternative is an active organization with members across the country. Under capitalism, nearly every single workplace is dictatorship of the boss, unions are key workers. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is what kind of leftism here. Let's see. I'm seeing a lot of unions, probably some anarcho-communism, maybe some Marxism in there. You fight to pay raises above inflation. We need to fight down the bosses. Leadership in our unions. Union leaders should our working class to win. This means union leaders being willing every tool. This one's a little hierarchical, but fine right now. That's the thing, is that when you go into leftism, like I mentioned before, leftist organizations are going to be filled with all kinds of fucking people. You're going to see everything from tankies to anarchists and Stalin and a bunch of other shit. You're going to find somebody that's going to be like, no, it was totally fine that Stalin killed all those fucking people, right? You're going to find dudes like that, and they're just going to be out in the wild. And then you're gonna find like chill dudes who are like, you know, I just kind of think we should like have a living wage, right? Like you're gonna find all sorts of but the important part here is just that you want to get started. You want to get started with organizing. You want to get started with learning and oh damn it, really the site's not up? Facebook page? Fuck. All right, well that sucks. I'm actually kind of excited for the South Asian Collective. Cool. And chances are, when you go into these orgs, you'll probably be able to find smaller organizations that are building that, like, a lot of these organizations share members and stuff. That's a big thing. Where were we in? New Hampshire? Cool. 350 New Hampshire was that open community-led organization. Okay. The DSA. DSA is a very common one. The IWW is also a very common one. I would very much recommend avoiding the PSL of any branch because oof, it's a whole thing. Sandwich climate action sandwich pay what? Oh, all right. All right, gang, looks like Philly Socialists. What are you guys about? What are we about? Constitution? Association. This is pretty anarchist right here. Wait, hold on. Constitutional Congress is the higher. Never mind. Not a good. This isn't good. This isn't good. You shouldn't have a Congress. You should not have a Congress in your group. I'm sorry. Never mind. That would be that's some MLs right there for sure. Okay, everybody. We're looking to end of the stream. If you missed at any point the stream, this will be up on YouTube like within the hour, I would say. I'm just gonna upload it straight from Twitch. Thank you everybody so much for showing up. I really appreciate everybody that came. Thank you, Like Canada. Thank you, Mo. And thank you, Morty. Slash, you gave me your actual name. One second. Thank you, Lily. Also, if you're still here, thank you so much for showing up. Helgazef. Hell is gay as fuck. That's how I choose to read that name. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I hope to see you guys again next week when I do this again. If I don't, I didn't get any answers on what you guys want to see next stream, but I will come up with a presentation for you guys. We'll talk about something specific, if anything. So I hope you guys have a great night. Check me out on Discord. Join the, hold on. If you guys aren't on my Discord, go ahead and hop that in. I also have a Twitter that I post and repost leftist stuff about on there. I have a TikTok, Gabby Collie. I have a YouTube channel with uploads and stuff. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll actually see you guys tomorrow. We're playing more Hi-Fi Rush and